The Danladi mansion in Akoi glowed that Saturday evening like it was wrapped in gold. Guests filled the courtyard, glasses of champagne glinting under the warm chandeliers. Laughter spilled through the air as the band played soft highlife tunes. Everyone spoke of Kenneth and Olivia as the perfect couple, 10 years of marriage, 2 children studying abroad, a booming logistics empire, and a home that could make an estate agent faint. Kenneth wore his fitted ash suit like a crown, his smile blinding as he moved from table to table greeting guests. Olivia stood beside him in a long emerald dress that shimmered softly under the light, her calm smile perfectly rehearsed. But behind that graceful stillness, her eyes told a different story, one of quiet endurance, bitter knowledge, and a heartbreak so well hidden it could almost pass for peace. As guests cheered for speeches, Kenneth lifted his glass, making a small joke about surviving marriage that drew laughter. He wrapped an arm around Olivia's waist, kissed her forehead, and whispered something that made her smile tightly. Nobody noticed the stiffness in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted her clutch. She had seen his phone earlier that week, the message from B with a lipstick emoji and the line, "She'll never see it coming." Olivia had sat quietly in the car that night, her chest tightening, but she didn't cry. She was far past the stage of tears. In that moment, she had made a silent promise to herself. Whatever he was planning, she would let him finish it. Then she would finish him, slowly, and without shouting. By 8 p.m., the dinner was in full swing. Kenneth's laughter grew louder with every toast, while Olivia moved with silent elegance, greeting guests, ensuring everything went smoothly. The air was scented with roses and secrets. Their friends took pictures, smiling couple, champagne raised, flash after flash, capturing the illusion forever. Olivia held her glass delicately, but never drank deeply. Her smile hit a storm. Her mind was calculating quietly. She had learned long ago that revenge didn't always come with blood. Sometimes it came with silence, with poise, and with timing so perfect it felt like divine judgment. 2 days before the anniversary, Kenneth had driven out of the office with a restlessness that pulsed through his veins. He met Bianca at a discreet boutique hotel off Lekki Phase 1. She was wearing a red silk blouse and gold earrings, her lips painted in that reckless shade he always liked. She leaned over the table, whispering with that same mixture of excitement and wickedness that made him forget reason. "Are you sure it'll work?" she asked. Kenneth smirked, tapping the small vial in his pocket. "It's harmless," he said. "Just something to make her pass out and embarrass herself in front of everyone. After that, I'll call the doctor, play the hero, and use it as an excuse to say she's unstable. That'll make the divorce easier." Bianca giggled, touching his hand. She liked his arrogance until it turned on her. Kenneth had grown tired of pretending. In his mind, Olivia was just a polished ornament that had lost its shine. He wanted someone fiery, someone who made him feel like he still had control, and Bianca, her best friend turned secret lover, gave him exactly that. She often mocked Olivia's calmness, calling her too perfect to be real. Kenneth believed the same. So, when he heard of a friend who sold party enhancers, he decided to test it. He told himself it wasn't poison, just something mild, enough to create a scene. Deep down, though, something darker was at play, his hunger to dominate, to make Olivia small in public, so he could feel big again. The kind of cruelty that hid behind a smile and a designer suit. After their meeting, Bianca kissed him goodbye and promised to attend the dinner in her innocent guest attire. Kenneth left the hotel with a self-satisfied grin, unaware that a hotel attendant had overheard part of their conversation. The world often hides witnesses in plain sight. As he drove home that evening, Lagos traffic crawling and horns blaring, he rehearsed his act, how he'd pour the drink, how he'd look shocked when she fainted. The image gave him pleasure. But miles away, Olivia was sitting on their terrace, watching the night sky, and whispering to herself, "Let him act his scene. I'll write the ending." On the morning of the anniversary, the house buzzed with decorators and caterers setting tables and arranging floral arches. Kenneth paced the living room, phone in hand, pretending to be busy with logistics calls. Olivia sat quietly at the breakfast table, her cup of tea untouched. The air between them was polite but cold. When he stepped out to the garden to take a call, His voice dropped, but not enough. Olivia heard fragments. Yes, the bottle is in my drawer. She won't suspect. During the toast. Her heart tightened, but she remained seated, pretending to scroll through her phone. She had been faithful for 10 years, loyal beyond reason. But that morning, something inside her snapped into clarity. Love had died long ago, only duty had stayed. When Kenneth left the room, Olivia walked to the kitchen where Mabel, her housekeeper, was chopping fruit. "Madam," Mabel whispered, "I overheard Olga talking to somebody last night about champagne. Be careful tonight." Olivia looked at her reflection in the stainless steel fridge, calm, poised, almost angelic. "Don't worry, Mabel," she said quietly. "Let him pour whatever he wants. I'll make sure he drinks every drop himself." Mabel froze, unsure if her madam was joking. Olivia simply smiled, that chilling calm that only women who've seen too much pain can carry without shaking. By noon, Olivia went into Kenneth's closet under the guise of picking his tie and noticed a small black box tucked behind cufflinks. Inside was the vial, clear liquid, unmarked. She placed it back exactly as she found it. She didn't confront him. Confrontation was for the weak. Revelation was for the patient. She returned to her room and opened her diary, the one she hadn't touched in months, writing a single sentence. "Tonight, truth will drink with us." Then she closed it, dressed slowly, and waited for evening to come. Evening came like a stage curtain rising. Olivia dressed in her emerald gown slowly, applying soft gold eyeshadow and a red lipstick she hadn't worn in years. Her beauty that night wasn't for admiration, it was for war. She stared at herself in the mirror and whispered, "He wants to see me fall. Let him watch himself first." Downstairs, Kenneth adjusted his tie, humming a tune and pretending nothing was wrong. But his hands were shaking. Guilt always leaves fingerprints on confidence. He had placed the vial inside his jacket pocket, rehearsing how smoothly he'd pour it. When Olivia descended the staircase, Kenneth looked up. For a second, he was speechless. She looked radiant, almost divine. "You look breathtaking," he said, forcing a smile. "And you look nervous," she replied gently, walking past him. The guests began to arrive, laughter filling every corner of the mansion. The catering staff moved like dancers, trays of champagne glittering. Olivia floated through the room with effortless grace, greeting each person, embracing even Bianca with the same calm smile that made Bianca's stomach twist with guilt. It was as though Olivia already knew, and her forgiveness felt heavier than anger. At the dining table, Olivia sat beside Kenneth while Bianca occupied a seat across, pretending innocence. Kenneth kept touching his jacket, feeling the vial like a secret weapon burning his pocket. Olivia's fingers brushed against his briefly. "Relax," she said softly, looking him in the eyes. "It's just a celebration." Kenneth laughed nervously, unaware that she was watching the clock. The night was about to become history. His history rewritten by her silence and precision. Revenge, she knew, was best served chilled, preferably in crystal glass. By 7:30 p.m., the Danladi home looked like a paradise for the rich. Candles flickered, violins hummed softly, and waiters glided with practiced grace. Friends, business partners, and family members filled the hall, dressed in glitter and gossip. Olivia floated between them with her usual elegance, hugging Kenneth's mother, thanking the guests, posing for photos. Kenneth played the doting husband, laughing too loudly, his arm around Olivia's waist. To everyone else, it was the perfect evening, love, wealth celebration. But beneath the surface, tension sat like smoke, waiting for a spark. Kenneth slipped away for a moment and returned with a bottle of champagne. "This is special," he announced to the room. "Imported from Italy, for my beautiful wife." Applause followed. He opened the bottle theatrically, poured into 2 flutes, and handed one to Olivia. The bubbles caught the light like tiny diamonds. Olivia accepted it gracefully but didn't drink. She just watched his hand as he poured his own glass, his thumb trembling slightly as he reached for the vial behind the bottle. She caught the movement, subtle but clear. Her pulse slowed, not quickened. She smiled, the kind of smile that said, "Go on." As Kenneth lifted his glass to toast, Olivia leaned slightly forward and said, "Let's do it properly." Switch glasses, you deserve the first toast. He blinked, startled, then chuckled nervously. No need, he muttered. Ladies first. But she laughed sweetly and insisted. Everyone cheered playfully, thinking it was romantic. With no choice left, Kenneth gave her his glass and took hers. To 10 years of love, Olivia said calmly. They raised their glasses, and that was the moment the tables turned. The man who planned her downfall had just lifted his own destruction. The hall quieted as Kenneth and Olivia raised their glasses. Candles flickered, laughter faded, and all eyes turned to them. Kenneth's smile was wide, almost forced, the veins in his neck pulsing faintly beneath his collar. To my beautiful wife, he began, his voice steady but cold beneath its charm. 10 years of peace, patience, and partnership. I couldn't have asked for a better woman. The crowd applauded warmly. Olivia tilted her head slightly, the corners of her mouth lifting. Her hand brushed his arm as she whispered, to your better judgment, and she took a small sip from the glass that was once meant for her. Kenneth, anxious not to appear awkward, drained his own quickly, forcing a laugh that cracked halfway. The sound of clinking glasses echoed through the hall, a soundtrack of irony that no one understood but her. Seconds passed like drops of rain before a storm. Kenneth felt warmth crawling up his throat, a metallic taste coating his tongue. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear the sudden dizziness. Are you okay? Olivia asked, her tone concerned, but her eyes unreadable. I'm fine, he mumbled, waving it off, but his hand trembled as he placed the glass on the table. Guests continued chatting, unaware that poison had replaced peace at their table. Olivia glanced at him again, the sweat beginning to form on his temples, the color draining from his lips, and for a brief moment, she felt pity. But pity was a luxury Kenneth had long lost the right to receive. As Kenneth excused himself and stumbled toward the restroom, Olivia stayed seated, her poise unshaken. Bianca's gaze followed him nervously from across the table, then flicked to Olivia, who met her eyes and smiled faintly, like a teacher watching a guilty student. Olivia lifted her glass again, her reflection shimmering in the champagne. Around her, laughter resumed, music rose, and the world continued. But the toast had already rewritten history. The poison Kenneth had prepared for her had already chosen its rightful owner. Inside the restroom, Kenneth splashed water on his face, trying to calm the rush of heat surging through his body. His heartbeat thumped irregularly, sweat dampening his shirt. He stared at his reflection in the mirror and saw something he'd never seen before: fear. The image of Olivia smiling as she insisted on switching glasses replayed in his head. Something in that smile haunted him. He stumbled out of the restroom, wiping his face, and returned to the hall just as the band changed tunes. Olivia rose from her chair and met him halfway, steadying him with one hand. You don't look well, she said softly. Kenneth forced a smile. Just too much excitement, he lied. But her fingers pressed briefly on his wrist, her eyes locking into his like quiet lightning. Sit, she said. It wasn't a suggestion. Bianca moved closer, pretending concern. Baby, you okay? She whispered. Olivia heard the word baby and gave a small, amused glance. You must be such a caring friend, Bianca. Always so close to my husband. Bianca froze mid-sentence, her face tightening. Kenneth shot her a warning look, his throat tightening from nausea. Olivia turned to the guests and announced cheerfully, Let's cut the cake. The hall clapped as she guided Kenneth toward the cake table. Every step he took seemed heavier, his knees weak, his breath short. The symbolism was perfect. The man who thought himself untouchable, now struggling to stand straight in his own celebration. As the cameras flashed, Olivia placed the knife in his shaking hand, covering it with hers. Smile, dear, she whispered. It's your big night. They cut the cake together as confetti rained. When Kenneth tried to speak, his voice slurred. Olivia raised her glass again. To loyalty, she said clearly, locking eyes with Bianca. The words sliced sharper than any knife. Somewhere in the crowd, laughter faltered. The music dipped slightly, as though even the instruments could sense the crack in the air. Kenneth's body swayed, his mouth forming words that refused to come. And then, the world tilted. Kenneth collapsed before anyone could understand what was happening. His champagne glass shattered beside his chair, spraying golden liquid across the marble floor. A sharp gasp spread through the hall, followed by chaos. Guests rushed forward. Bianca screamed his name, and Olivia stood still, frozen yet calm, her face an unreadable canvas of quiet calculation. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted. Mabel, the housekeeper, darted toward the phone. Kenneth's eyes rolled back as he convulsed slightly, foam forming at his mouth. Olivia knelt beside him, her hand hovering just above his chest. "Kenneth, can you hear me?" she asked softly. There was no answer, just shallow, erratic breathing. Bianca pushed through the crowd and knelt opposite Olivia. "What did you do to him?" she screamed. Olivia looked up slowly, her expression composed. "You should be asking him that," she replied in a low, almost tender tone. "He prepared this drink himself. I simply watched." Bianca froze, her mind spinning. She turned to the bottle on the table, noticing a faint residue at the bottom of Kenneth's glass. Her face went pale. Guests began murmuring, taking out their phones. Someone muttered that maybe it was food poisoning. Another whispered that it was a heart attack. But Olivia knew exactly what it was, and she wasn't going to explain it to anyone yet. As paramedics arrived, she stepped aside gracefully, allowing them space to work. The flashing red lights from the ambulance bathed the hall in streaks of irony. The perfect marriage had just fallen apart under chandeliers and applause. Olivia watched as they lifted Kenneth onto a stretcher, his expensive wristwatch dangling loosely on his limp hand. Bianca tried to climb into the ambulance, but Olivia stopped her with a calm voice. "Don't bother," she said, her eyes like polished steel. "Your part in this play is done." Then she turned, faced the crowd, and said softly, "I'll follow him shortly." Her tone was so controlled that people believed her calmness was grief. Only Mabel knew better. It was victory wrapped in silence. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and panic. Olivia arrived 20 minutes later, still in her emerald dress, her heels clicking softly against the tiles. Nurses whispered as she walked past, the woman whose husband collapsed at his own anniversary dinner. In the emergency room, Kenneth lay motionless, tubes running into his arm. A doctor approached her asking, "Madam, was there any alcohol or medication involved?" Olivia's lips curved faintly. "Only champagne," she said. "And perhaps deceit." The doctor blinked, confused, but didn't ask further. Bianca stood outside the room, pacing, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. When she saw Olivia, she ran forward. "You witch," she shouted. "You switched it, didn't you? You made him drink it." Olivia tilted her head. "Switched what, Bianca? Your loyalty or his glass?" Security intervened, pulling Bianca back as she screamed insults. Olivia simply watched her, expressionless. "You and Kenneth deserve each other," she said quietly. "Except now, you'll have to love him in the ICU." The words hit like thunder. Bianca broke down crying, collapsing into a chair. Olivia turned to the doctor. "Do what you must. But if he wakes up, tell him the truth has a bitter taste." Then she walked to the waiting room, sat down, and closed her eyes, replaying every detail of the night. For the first time in years, her heartbeat felt steady, her breathing calm. It wasn't joy, it was release. The storm she had carried inside her chest for a decade had finally emptied itself. Outside, journalists began gathering, cameras flashing as news spread. Businessman collapses during anniversary dinner. Olivia stepped out briefly, answering none of their questions. She simply said, "Pray for him," before entering her car. Inside, Mabel waited quietly in the passenger seat. "Madam, what really happened?" she whispered. Olivia looked out the window and said softly, "He served me death. I offered him reflection." The city lights blurred as they drove home, the hum of the engine the only witness to the beginning of Kenneth's slow unraveling. By morning, the Danladi mansion was surrounded by police vehicles. The domestic staff whispered among themselves, fear clinging to their words. Officers entered politely but firmly, carrying warrant letters. Olivia sat in the living room, calm, wrapped in a beige robe, sipping tea as if she'd expected them. The lead investigator, Inspector Musa, introduced himself and asked to see her privately. "We found a small vial at the hospital," he said. The nurses said it was in your husband's jacket pocket. Do you know anything about it? Olivia smiled faintly, setting her teacup down. Yes, Inspector, she replied. It's the same vial I discovered in his drawer 2 days ago. I believe he planned to use it on me. The officer raised an eyebrow. And you didn't report it? Would you have believed me without evidence? She asked calmly. Silence answered her question. Olivia handed him a small notebook from her drawer, her diary, open to the page that read, Tonight, truth will drink with us. Musa read it slowly, exhaling. You knew something might happen? He asked. I knew, she replied softly, but I wanted the truth to reveal itself. Another officer entered with the housekeeper Mabel, who confirmed overhearing Kenneth's suspicious phone calls. The pieces began to align. Musa closed his notebook and stood. Madam, I can't say you did wrong. You didn't poison him. But I have to record this as an attempted harm case for now. Olivia nodded, her voice unwavering. Do your duty, Inspector. The rest is God's duty. As they left, Bianca appeared at the gate, surrounded by reporters, shouting that Olivia set Kenneth up. The officers blocked her path. Olivia stepped outside, her face calm under the morning sun. You should rest, Bianca, she said softly. Your acting days are over. Then she turned back into the house, closed the door, and sat by the window, watching the reporters fade away. For the first time, she smiled, not a victorious smile, but one of quiet strength. Kenneth was alive, but broken. Bianca was exposed. And the world had seen that Olivia Danladi was no woman to be underestimated. Justice, she thought, doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears an emerald dress and a calm smile. Days after the hospital chaos, silence settled in the Danladi mansion like an unwanted guest. The press feasted on the scandal, splashing headlines that read, Wealthy businessman collapses at own anniversary. Wife claims it was self-inflicted. Olivia stayed indoors, receiving no visitors, speaking only when necessary. Her composure frustrated reporters who expected drama. Instead, she offered grace. Mabel stayed close, occasionally catching her madam staring out the window for hours, her face blank but her mind racing. Olivia wasn't celebrating Kenneth's downfall. She was processing the weight of betrayal that had nearly killed her twice. First emotionally, then literally. Every sound in the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, reminded her of the life she'd built with a man who saw her as furniture. Beautiful, useful, replaceable. At the hospital, Kenneth awoke to tubes, machines, and shame. The doctor's explanation was gentle but firm. Traces of sedative mixed with mild toxins were found in his bloodstream. You're lucky you vomited, the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. Kenneth's first thought wasn't gratitude, it was fear. Did she? Olivia, he murmured, voice weak. The doctor frowned. She saved you, sir. She's the one who called the ambulance. That statement burned deeper than any accusation. The woman he tried to harm had saved him, not for love, but for something colder, closure. When his mother visited, weeping beside his bed, Kenneth turned away, unable to face her questions. The empire he'd built on lies had finally started crumbling, and even his reflection avoided him. Meanwhile, Olivia prepared her statement for the authorities with surgical calm. She presented screenshots of Kenneth's messages with Bianca, the security footage showing him bringing the bottle, and the witness testimony from Mabel. Inspector Musa later told his junior officer, that woman isn't seeking pity, she's seeking peace. But Olivia didn't need the law's sympathy. She had something sharper. Truth. And truth had already started its quiet work, gnawing at Kenneth's pride from the inside. Bianca's life began to unravel faster than she could repaint her lies. Her name leaked from a hospital staff member who overheard Kenneth's delirious mutterings. Within hours, gossip blogs erupted. Mistress behind Danladi's scandal identified. Her company's board called an emergency meeting, suspending her as public relations director. Clients withdrew, friends vanished, and even her husband, who'd long suspected her infidelity, filed for divorce. For the first time, Bianca experienced the loneliness she once mocked Olivia for enduring. Her makeup couldn't hide the sleepless nights, and her phone became a museum of unread hate messages. She called Kenneth's phone repeatedly, but his mother refused to let her speak. When she finally gathered courage to call Olivia, her voice cracked with desperation. "Please, Olivia. I didn't know he'd go that far," she cried. Olivia's silence, on the other end, felt heavier than anger. When Olivia finally spoke, her tone was calm and even. "You knew enough," she said. "You mocked me in my home. You smiled at my children. You toasted to my patience while sharing my husband's secrets. You don't get to cry innocence now." Bianca tried to explain, to beg, to promise that she'd disappear forever. But Olivia's words sliced through her pleas. "Disappear if you must. But understand, your punishment isn't for me. It's from the mirror you'll face every morning." Then she ended the call. Bianca collapsed onto her couch, clutching her phone, sobbing uncontrollably. The irony was cruel. The same lips that whispered gossip about Olivia were now trembling with regret. Weeks passed, and Bianca's life continued to shrink. She sold her jewelry to pay legal fees. Her face became the symbol of scandal, and every public outing turned into whispers and stares. One morning, she walked past a billboard featuring Olivia, smiling beside a new line of women's business wear she'd quietly launched. The tagline read, "Grace is Power." Bianca stood there, rain soaking her hair, realizing that Olivia hadn't just survived. She had evolved. And Bianca, once the intruder, had become the ghost. It was on a dull Tuesday afternoon when Kenneth's lawyer, Mr. Olivia, visited Olivia. He arrived unannounced, his briefcase heavy with guilt. "Madam," he said softly, "there's something you should know. Kenneth instructed me, weeks before the anniversary, to transfer some of his assets into Bianca's name." Olivia didn't flinch. She simply gestured for him to continue. "The properties in Lekki and the shares in the transport firm are no longer under your joint ownership." "But," he hesitated, "Bianca hasn't been able to access them since the police sealed her accounts for investigation." Olivia smiled faintly, her calm disarming. "Let her keep them," she said. "They're cursed gifts. What she took wasn't money, it was my peace. And I've already taken it back." Mr. Olivia stared at her, unsure if she was bitter or liberated. In truth, Olivia was both. That evening, Olivia opened the safe Kenneth had once hidden behind his study bookshelf. Inside were old photographs, their wedding certificate, and a handwritten letter from years ago, his proposal. For the first time, she read it without tears. "To my queen," it said, "may we build a kingdom no storm can destroy." The irony stung. She folded it neatly and placed it back, whispering, "The storm came from within, Kenneth." In the quiet of the room, her own voice sounded like closure. She didn't burn his letter, didn't rip it apart, she left it there, a fossil of promises turned poison. When Kenneth's lawyer later informed him in the hospital about Olivia's reaction, Kenneth covered his face and wept. "She's not even angry," he said. "That's worse." He realized too late that the absence of her rage was the loudest form of rejection. While he had used deceit to gain control, she had used dignity to end it. The empire he tried to manipulate into dominance had become his punishment, a living monument to his failure as a husband and as a man. One rainy afternoon, Mabel entered Olivia's study, hesitant, holding a small notebook. "Madam," she began, "there's something I should tell you." Olivia looked up from her laptop, expression patient. "Go ahead." Mabel explained how she had overheard Kenneth and Bianca weeks before the anniversary, plotting in the garden. They spoke in low tones, thinking no one was around. "I wanted to warn you then," Mabel said tearfully, "but I was afraid he'd send me away. I have children, Ma." Olivia rose from her chair and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did right," she said softly. "Sometimes silence is the safest scream." Mabel sobbed quietly, guilt spilling after weeks of secrecy. But Olivia's forgiveness was calm, not sentimental. She didn't believe in punishing the innocent who had been powerless. Her real anger was reserved for those who smiled while plotting. That evening, Olivia prepared dinner herself for the first time in months, simple rice and stew. Mabel watched from a corner, wiping her eyes as Olivia served her a plate too. "Eat," Olivia said, sitting opposite her. "We both survived him." The two women ate in silence, the rain tapping against the windows like slow applause. For Olivia, the act wasn't about food, it was about reclaiming her home, one quiet ritual at a time. Every spoonful washed away a memory of humiliation. Every wordless moment reminded her that peace wasn't loud, it was steady. When Mabel left that night, Olivia sat by the window with her diary. She wrote one line, "Those who hide evil forget, silence has memory." Her eyes lingered on that sentence for a long time. Somewhere in the city, Bianca was drinking alone. Kenneth was battling guilt in his hospital bed, and Olivia, the woman they once called soft, had become the calm before the next storm. Because she wasn't done. Not yet. Weeks later, Bianca requested a meeting with Olivia. Against everyone's advice, Olivia agreed, not out of curiosity, but to end what remained of their unfinished war. They met at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island. Bianca arrived first, wearing dark sunglasses, her face thinner, pride deflated. When Olivia entered, every conversation in the cafe seemed to fade. Bianca stood awkwardly. "Olivia, thank you for coming." Olivia sat, her poise effortless, her perfume faint but commanding. "You said it was urgent," she said. Bianca nodded, trembling. "I need to tell you something. Kenneth didn't want to divorce you because of money. He wanted to ruin you, publicly. He said he was tired of your calmness, that people praised you too much. He said he wanted to remind you that even angels fall." Olivia's lips parted slightly, then curved into a sad smile. "Then he fell into his own pit," she replied quietly. Bianca wept openly, reaching for Olivia's hand, but Olivia didn't move. "Please forgive me," Bianca whispered. "I didn't see the danger until it was too late." Olivia's eyes softened, not with pity, but with wisdom. "Forgiveness isn't a favor," she said. "It's freedom. I forgave you the day you lost peace. You and Kenneth were lessons, not enemies." Bianca sobbed harder, hiding her face. Olivia stood, leaving a few naira notes on the table. "Take care of yourself," she said. "And remember, sometimes, the punishment for betrayal is simply living long enough to regret it." Then she walked out, her heels echoing across the tiles like punctuation marks at the end of a tragedy. Outside, as Olivia entered her car, she glanced once through the cafe window. Bianca sat hunched, her face buried in her palms, the sunlight highlighting her tears. For a fleeting second, Olivia felt the ghost of the woman she used to be, trusting, naive, warm. Then she straightened, exhaled slowly, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, she saw Bianca's reflection fade, like the past itself receding into distance. The revelation hadn't broken her. It had confirmed what she already knew. Kenneth's cruelty was never about love. It was about control. And now, both of them had none. Kenneth sat in his hospital bed, staring at the blank wall for hours, his mind echoing with the words Olivia had spoken before leaving him there. "You served me death. I offered you reflection." The doctors said his body was healing, but inside, he was decomposing under guilt. His mother prayed beside his bed daily, but even her whispered supplications couldn't drown out the memory of that night, the laughter, the glass, the collapse. He had thought himself clever, untouchable, a man in control of his wife and image. Yet, he had destroyed himself with his own arrogance. The sedative had left him weak, his nerves shaky, but it was shame that truly crippled him. His empire ran without him now. Partners distanced themselves. He used to command boardrooms. Now he couldn't command the strength to look at his own reflection. He spent his days replaying scenes in his head, the moment Olivia switched glasses, her calm eyes piercing through his performance, and the slight nod she gave when he began to sweat. It was as if she had seen his soul, stripped bare. He wanted to hate her for surviving him, but every attempt only deepened his self-disgust. Even Bianca's messages, hundreds of unread apologies, filled him with nothing but exhaustion. He ignored them all. For the first time, Kenneth began to understand the kind of woman Olivia truly was, soft enough to love deeply, wise enough to know when to stop, and dangerous enough to survive humiliation with grace. He envied her peace, even when it haunted him. One evening, while watching the sunset from the hospital window, he whispered to himself, She didn't kill me. She killed who I was. It was the truest thing he had ever said. That night he made a decision. He would leave Lagos, at least for a while, to rebuild quietly. But not before returning home one last time to collect his things and face the ghost of the woman he once owned, yet never truly knew. The case against Olivia was formally dropped after 2 months. Inspector Musa himself signed the final report. No evidence of intentional harm. Attempted domestic manipulation by the victim confirmed. When the news reached Olivia, she barely reacted. Her victory didn't feel sweet, it felt empty. Kenneth's lawyer confirmed that her husband was recovering and planned to travel abroad for therapy and clarity. The words sounded professional, but Olivia heard the subtext. He was running away from his shame. On the day the court dismissed the case, Olivia stood outside the building in a plain black dress, watching journalists swarm for comments. "Madam, how do you feel now that justice is yours?" one asked. She smiled faintly. "Justice isn't mine," she said. "It just came home." Then she walked to her car and closed the door quietly, her silence heavier than any statement. That evening, she sat in the living room, staring at framed photos from happier years, their wedding, family trips, birthdays. She thought of how deeply she had once loved Kenneth, how she defended him even when her friends whispered about his late nights and flirtations. Her loyalty had been blind, her love foolishly forgiving. She wondered if that was strength or stupidity. For the first time since the incident, tears escaped her calm mask. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered to herself. Mabel, standing by the doorway, pretended not to hear. The world saw a woman who conquered betrayal. Olivia saw a woman who had lost herself, proving she was strong. Late that night, she opened her phone and saw a message from Kenneth's mother. "He will return soon. Maybe time will heal both of you." Olivia read it again and again, unsure if healing meant reconciling or forgetting. Her heart wanted one last conversation, not for revenge, for closure. The kind of closure only a fool still hopes for after being publicly humiliated and nearly killed by love. But pain, she realized, doesn't always end with justice. Sometimes it lingers disguised as longing. Kenneth returned to Lagos 3 months later, thinner, quieter, his arrogance replaced by something hollow. Olivia heard from neighbors that his car was seen parked outside the mansion one morning. She stood at the balcony, watching him through the glass gates, his once commanding presence, now reduced to a ghost, moving through his own property. He entered the house without knocking, as if still owning the air. Olivia turned slowly to face him. The silence between them was suffocating. "You look better," she said softly. "You look finished," he replied, his voice low, without venom. For a moment, she thought he might apologize, but he didn't. He just looked around the house, eyes sweeping over the memories they once shared, the sofa they bought together, the piano she never learned to play. Then he sighed deeply. "I came to pack some things. I'm leaving for good." Her lips parted, but no words came out. He walked past her into their bedroom and began gathering his watches, a few files and clothes. Each folded shirt felt like a funeral to her. When he was done, he zipped his suitcase and turned to her one last time. "Olivia," he said quietly, "I don't hate you, but I can't be here anymore. Every corner of this house feels like judgment." She swallowed hard, her voice trembling for the first time. "You could have killed me, Kenneth," she said. "I could have," he answered, meeting her eyes. "And maybe that's why I can't forgive myself or you." He walked toward the door, leaving behind a silence that screamed louder than shouting ever could. When the door closed, Olivia sank into the couch, her entire body trembling. She wanted to believe it was strength keeping her upright, but it was denial. Her revenge had ended, yet she felt like the one abandoned. Love had betrayed her twice, once by his infidelity, and now by her own heart still aching for the man who ruined her peace. The house felt colder, emptier, as if the walls themselves pitted her. For the first time, Olivia realized that victory didn't always heal. Sometimes it just exposed how lonely triumph can be. Weeks turned into months. Kenneth had vanished from the city, leaving behind whispers and unfinished apologies. Olivia tried to move on. She redecorated the mansion, removed every trace of him, the cologne on the dresser, the framed certificates, the suits hanging in the wardrobe. Yet, even after the rooms were bare, she couldn't escape his shadow. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it was filled with memories of his laughter, his betrayal, and the night everything changed. Mabel urged her to start afresh, maybe travel or sell the house. But Olivia clung to the walls like they were her only witnesses. She told herself she was fine, but every quiet moment exposed how broken she still was. Her friends invited her out occasionally, but she always declined. She hated pity. The world saw her as the woman who triumphed, but deep down she knew she was surviving, not living. One evening, while going through old photos, she saw a picture of Kenneth holding her from behind, his face pressed against her cheek. She remembered how happy she was that day, the little foolish joy that once felt eternal. The memory cracked her composure. She wept uncontrollably, whispering, "God, I still love him." It was a confession that burned, because she had tried so hard to unlove him. But love doesn't take revenge. It just bruises quietly until it learns to stop bleeding. By the following week, she made a decision that shocked even herself. She told Mabel she wanted to see Kenneth, not to blame or boast, but to ask if there was still a chance. "Madam," Mabel said gently, "after all he did?" Olivia nodded with trembling hands. "Sometimes we forgive stupidity by living it twice," she whispered. She wasn't thinking logically. She was thinking with the last fragments of her broken heart. The meeting happened on a calm Sunday afternoon in a quiet restaurant at Victoria Island. Kenneth looked different, distant, calm, almost content. Olivia arrived dressed simply, no makeup, no jewelry, just a woman stripped of pride. They sat facing each other in silence for long minutes. Finally, she spoke. "Kenneth," she began softly, "I don't want to fight anymore. We've both been foolish. I've been foolish." He looked at her with mild surprise, but said nothing. "I miss us," she continued, her voice trembling. "I miss the man who once held my hand in church, who called me his peace. Maybe we can try again. Maybe this doesn't have to be the end." Her eyes glistened. Around them, people chatted. But to Olivia, the world had gone still. She had laid her pride on the table, raw and trembling. Kenneth exhaled slowly, looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "Olivia," he said quietly, "you destroyed the illusion that made me respect myself. I can't rebuild with you. I've lost too much already, my name, my control, my pride. Being with you would be a reminder of my failure every day." His words sliced through her like cold metal. She reached out to touch his hand, but he withdrew. "Please," she whispered, "I can change. I don't care what people say. I just want us back." But Kenneth stood up slowly, placed some money on the table, and said without cruelty, "You already got your revenge. Don't ruin it by begging." Then he walked away. Olivia sat frozen, her heart collapsing under the weight of humiliation. The waiter approached timidly to clear the table, but she couldn't move. Her reflection in the glass window stared back, a woman once proud, now trembling like a shadow of herself. Tears streamed silently as she whispered, "I won. But I lost everything." Outside, Kenneth's car drove away, disappearing into traffic. The city kept moving, indifferent to her pain. Olivia finally stood, straightened her shoulders, and walked out, no longer the avenger, not even the victim. Just a woman who had learned that revenge can correct betrayal, but never heal love. And as the evening breeze brushed her face, she whispered, "Happy anniversary, Kenneth," knowing he would never hear it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to come back for the next amazing tale yet.